when talking to your athletes' parents about what you're seeing with their children, don't normalize the behavior in an attempt to make them feel better. How often have you heard or been part of a conversation like this? Tired parent. So, how did Sally do in her lesson today? Coach. She did well, but she was pretty busy. She had trouble standing still and listening to me giving directions. Tired parent. I'm sorry. She has a hard time maintaining attention, but she is listening. She's just very busy, and it takes a lot of work to keep her on track. Coach. All kids are just busy, but she just needs to pay attention to the instructions so she knows what to do in the lesson. Pardon my acting skills. So this exchange sounded okay, right? I mean, the coach didn't sound mean. They were just explaining what behavior was required in the lesson. I mean, we're taught as coaches to be clear about our expectations, right? The problem lies with the all kids are busy part. You may think that by downplaying the child's hyperactivity, you're making the parent feel better by pointing out that all kids are busy or have difficulty paying attention. But you aren't making them feel better. In actual fact, you are making them feel awful. This is where you really have to think carefully. Kids with invisible disabilities have an actual, proven neurobiological and physical disability. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. They simply are more, and because of these deficits, they demand more from parents and coaches. Would you tell a parent of a child with cerebral palsy that it's okay, all children have trouble with movement and muscle tone? I'm pretty sure you wouldn't. But when you tell a parent of a child with an invisible condition that all children are like that, you are devaluing their entire experience of parenting their child. You are, in actuality, giving credence to the judgment they hear every day from people with no knowledge of the biological reasons for their children's differences. You are, in effect, saying that if all children are like that, then it must be an issue with the environment or with parenting. And that's just shitty. I've had that done to me more times than I can count, and I can't tell you how shitty it feels. Even when it's meant with the best of intentions, it still hurts. The shame and recrimination we feel and think every day as the parent of a neurodiverse kiddo is a pretty heavy burden. Trust me, we already judge ourselves more harshly than other parents, so don't add to that guilt, okay? Next, as the saying goes, if you've met one individual with autism, you've met one individual with autism. That's from Stephen Shore. This means that no two neurodiverse athletes will have the same characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses as the other. Every neurodiverse individual is unique, and as coaches, it is our job to figure out what works, what doesn't, and how to adapt our teaching styles to best accommodate them. It is not their job to accommodate us because they are physically unable to do so. And I'm going to say that again because I was stupid enough to not believe this years ago. Kids with ADHD, ASD, they can't help it. So you have to change your approach with every neurodiverse student as if they're a puzzle to figure out. You have to observe their behavior, discuss their needs with their parents, who are often the best source of information. You have to research their conditions. You have to talk with other coaches or teachers who have had success with their own special needs students. And finally, you have to use trial and error in your approach to coaching them. Coaching students with invisible special needs is not for the faint of heart. These kids can try your patience and knowledge to the nth degree. But when you figure out how they learn best, I promise you will be richly rewarded. Without further ado, here are a few common sense and easily applied strategies that you can use in your everyday coaching with these athletes. First and foremost, keep your instructions short. Really short. This short. Seriously, guys, I cannot stress this enough. Asking kids with attention deficits to sit through long lectures, explanations, or any instructions longer than a few chunks of information is actually not only unrealistic, it is almost cruel to them. You need to give instructions in short, easy to remember chunks, and then send your student off to try it. If you use cue or keywords when you teach, and you should because hello, then you need to try to use the same 4 to 5 keywords for everything. I know, this is hard to do, especially if you're working on 2 very different skills in a lesson, but do your best. It is critical that you make your instructions as easily accessible for their brains as possible. Think about it. Learning is an incredibly complex process. When you learn something new, you have to be able to access and rehearse the information as you hold it in your working memory. Then you have to incorporate it into your motor program carefully enough so that you myelinate the correct pathway. And then let's not forget that the brain also has to convert the information from your short-term working memory to the long-term memory, and then be able to figure out where you stored the correct information when you need to access it in subsequent practices. And, of course, if you struggle with regulating attention, this will hamper the process of encoding all of this information. And this is what happens when you have students who have seemingly grasped a skill or concept one day and then appear to have no knowledge of the skill the next. It feels like you're reteaching skills constantly, and it can get really frustrating if you're a coach. Which leads me to my next point. When you're teaching neurodiverse kiddos and athletes, you need to have more patience, more understanding, and more kindness. Imagine what the learning process feels like for your neurodiverse students. These athletes are giving you every effort they can. They're doing their best to attend and learn, and they still struggle to retain skills from one day to the next. Yet they have to watch their neurotypical counterparts pick up the skills more rapidly and with much less effort than they have to. It's not fair. And as a coach, you absolutely have to give support and empathy to these athletes. They will require more understanding, more patience, and more kindness than you have ever thought you could have. I am not a patient person, and this is hard for me, and I struggle with it on the daily, but you can do it. Don't think you have that level of support in you? Trust me, you will find wells of empathy you never knew you had, because when these kids finally achieve a skill they have worked and cried and literally bled for, it will feel like they've won the freaking Olympics. I promise. For a great infographic on how we encode, store, and retrieve information, check out learnupon.com. You might like it. The learning process for any new skill is hard enough for a neurotypical learner, let alone a child who has a deficit in the brain processes required for these tasks.